All right. This is the February 3rd meeting of the Capital Advisory Committee, called to order at 10:04. This meeting is being held through Zoom webinar in accordance with Governor Baker's executive order. And we'll go ahead and get started with Mark. So the first thing we have up for discussion was the public safety complex study request. We sent out the study that we had done previously. That was only for the police station. This is more for a public safety complex. So we pulled Paul Morset in to discuss it as well, as it was a joint submission between the two of you. So Mark, Paul, you guys go ahead, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you virtually as it is. Thank you, Mary, for kind of explaining that, and Bruce. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background, at least as I understand it, on the study that was done by Hill Architects. Just kind of from my perspective, because that had been approved, obviously, before I started here just a little over a year ago. That had already been approved. I believe maybe COVID had delayed some of it or something, if I remember correctly. But at some point, Jamie, the architect, did reach out to me and say they wanted to keep working on this. And they had started working with Chief DeLessio on it, but he wanted to come meet with me and get my thoughts. Honestly, I don't think I really thought about, or maybe was even told, like certain parameters, like, or limitations. So when he came in to meet with me, you know, he shared with me what Chief DeLessio and him had looked at so far, and you know, between interior spaces, and then really he was focusing on the expansion and the addition portion. And I said to him, I said, well, that's well and good. I said, but I also have some pretty significant issues with the existing space that are immediate concern to me with you know, with officer safety especially, and I'd like to address those as well. So we walked every inch of the building, and I gave him some perspective on at least what my thoughts were on things that needed to be changed within the existing structure, as well as my thoughts on what I'd like to see in the addition as well. So sorry if I drove up the expected cost by doing that, but I was really honestly viewing him as an outlet of, hey, here's what needs to change in this building if we're going to stay here. An addition won't fix this place. I mean, quite frankly, it would be nice. I mean, and it would meet some of our needs just to get an addition on here. But there's certainly spaces in the existing building that we also need to change as well to get us, you know, up to modern police practices and safety expectations here. So that's a little bit of the background, at least as I see it from where I came in kind of midstream on this project. I'll defer to Chief Morset, I guess, I would certainly want him input on. I mean, you've seen, well, I don't know, Ryan, when you want me to entertain questions, if you want me to entertain questions on the Hill Architects piece specifically, or just get into our proposal.
So let's have Chief Morset give his side of the public safety complex argument.
Sure.
A proposal, I should say.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that word argument.
I changed it.
Thank you. From my perspective, and which is, I guess, the whole fire department's perspective, is the rapid growth we've experienced over the years. And I think I mentioned this last meeting. Our station was designed, it's 25 years old now. It was designed for 7 men to work Monday through Friday. It wasn't designed for the operation we had. We're making do, but there's extremely cramped. The bunk room, for instance, is just not designed to today's standards. But it's working. We're probably going to actually expand it just to spread some people out as well, which would mean that we'll probably lose a good chunk of our training room. Our office space, because there's just more things happening and more people need a desk that they can, you know, confidently work on stuff and in a timely manner. It's getting crowded. And then we turn out to the apparatus bays with the equipment and the apparatus. It all fits in there, but it doesn't leave much room for anything else. The standards now, our bunker gear where they're hanging should be a little bit further away from the trucks, even though we have, the hoses to take away the exhaust system, which we were fortunate enough to be one of the first departments in actually Western Mass to have that system. We actually moved it from our old station up to here when we moved in here back in 1997. It's just, from our end, the station's cramped, and I know this has never been on the capital plan. It's never been something that's been discussed. Chief DeLassio and I did bring it up a few times, but it was never, we never pushed it forward to Mary or even the previous town manager, just because there was other competing priorities probably for both departments, and we see what's going on in the town. I don't anticipate this happening in the next couple of years, but if we could do the study and put a serious committee together to move forward, to keep it moving forward, I think is the method. And then in the meantime, we can figure out the best methods to pay for a project like this. You throw in the concerns about the construction costs. The rumors are that they're going to level off, and I'm kind of hoping so, just for everybody's sake all around. But that's kind of the viewpoint that I have on it. Not sure if there's any specific questions fire related that anybody would have.
So I think next, Mark, if you want to give an overview, or actually Bruce, since we got the advantage of having Bruce with us too, an overview in review of the study for the police station that we already have. And then we can do questions on that study. Then we'll do questions on the combined joint complex. Does that sound? Proposal, not argument, Paul.
Thank you.
Sure. I guess I'll speak first, I guess, just specific to the police station study that's already been done. I think you have a copy of the floor plans, the proposed floor plans. Largely I kind of break it into two here. The addition portion of it would encompass kind of something of a locker room, more of a locker room than we have right now. One major concern I have is we really only have one locker room, and right now we are an all-male department. I don't expect us to stay that way. I don't want us to stay that way, quite frankly. But I also recognize right now, bringing a female officer in, we would have to recreate, renovate, even just clean up some existing space just to give them their own private space to change. One of the, I'm looking at the wrong picture here. Apologize. Second page. The addition, as we were looking at it, down in the ground level, which is the lower level, we were looking at adding or putting a small exercise room, which we currently have one now in our existing space, but this would move it, make it actually a little smaller, because it doesn't necessarily need as much space as it has. It'd obviously bring the building more closer up to code. We would have a small training room. A prior drawing I saw before I started had a larger training room, but I felt the need to maybe make that a little bit smaller for the sake of getting some other things. It have one single vehicle bay. This would just be for vehicle maintenance and types of things that we can do on site here, or when we bring in outside vendors to work on our vehicles or fix things. It would give them a covered and warm space to do that. Just one bay. Certainly not parking every cruiser. It would just be one bay. It would also, like I said, give us two distinct locker rooms, both with their own bathroom facilities. It would improve our, it would give us an actual break room, which we don't really have right now. A functional break room or functional kitchenette. We don't have that anywhere in the station. Right now, our officers eat in the same area where our prisoners are booked. So you can imagine how pleasant that can be. It would improve our evidence storage and certainly make that more secure than it is right now, and bring that up to code. That's mostly what the lower level addition would do. I guess I incorporated the existing building into my discussion here as well, sorry. Upstairs, I was looking at in our I'll say in our existing building, which is kind of the bottom half of the floor plan you see is our existing space. I'm proposing to take one of our 2 Sally ports that's on the far right there on your drawing. Right now we have two drive-in garages. Here I'm proposing taking one of those and converting it into a booking area. Because right now our existing booking area, like I said, is too far within the PD. It's not secure enough. A prisoner can easily escape from it and put our civilian employees at risk. They could run around the whole apartment. They get out of that spot. It's just not. They're too close to the officer booking them. It's an invitation for a disaster. It's probably the single most deficient feature in our current department, quite honestly, and unsafe is our booking area as it exists now. So that was a priority for me. It was to make a more secure booking area. So that takes one of our 2 garages up on the upper level here out to do that. It would attach that would keep our booking area attached to our existing cell block area. Our cell block area is actually one of my biggest arguments for a new public safety or a new station period, whether it's public safety complex or new building. But our existing cell block area does fail inspections every year from the Department of Public Health. It's very antiquated. It kind of reminds you of the Andy Griffith Show, was my impression when I walked into it. And Joe and Dunn and facilities guy do a great job of trying to fix our issues, plumbing issues, the toilet issues, to keep it up to as best a code as we can. But there's just things in there that just can't be fixed. That they're nothing near what a modern cell holding area looks like. And actually, quite honestly, in a new building, I would propose actually reducing the amount of cells we have, because we don't need as many as we have. We just need ones that are more up to code. So that's in our existing space. I definitely have some renovations being done there between booking, between also giving the officers a more defined report writing area, giving an office area for our sergeants, as well as bringing our detectives unit detectives upstairs. Right now they're down in the ground level down below. And in this, with an addition and a renovation, I would bring them upstairs to this level to keep that ground level really just locker rooms, break rooms, exercise room, training room, and things in the mechanical areas of the building. On the new addition itself, which is the top of the drawing that you see, I proposed moving my office and my administrative assistant's office out into that area. I also have the presumed to be lieutenant or second in command position office out there as well, and moving the detectives area into that as well, with an expectation of having more working detectives than we have now, which is part of my immediate plans. Having a small kitchenette to kind of serve as the kitchenette area for the upper level of the police department, and then a conference room, which would be a conference room pretty much for in-house for our own command staff meetings, small meeting needs, things like that. That would also be accessible right near an external entrance to the building. So that would be easy access if we were hosting somebody else's small meeting or whatever here too. So so that's kind of the as quick as I can, I guess, summary of what I was thinking about for existing changes in our current space and in the addition, if we do end up staying here. Of course, the architect also incorporated things to bring us up to code as well in certain areas where we're lacking. One thing that is really lacking, I'd say, I also want to point out, which I don't even really have addressed in this drawing, is our lobby area where people walk in from the street. It's really in a better situation. It would have a bathroom attached to it. It really should. It should, you know, even in this, like I said, we still don't have that. We have people come in now, ask to use the bathroom. We have to escort them inside. Not a preferred practice in a secure building to do that. But it's what we have for now. So guess any questions for me?
I was gonna kick it over to Bruce, see if Bruce has
yeah.
anything else to add to the police department study. I know Bruce is kind of an extra addition. Mary, you're muted.
Bruce said he doesn't have anything to add at the moment. Thank you for your patience with my technical difficulties.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So does the committee have any questions for Mark or Bruce on the completed police department study? Not so much around public safety. Connor, I think you beat Ralph.
He did.
I noticed that there was like that cost comparison in the study about like building new versus renovating the existing. But what I didn't really see, or maybe I didn't understand, was I saw the drawings for like renovating the existing, but I didn't see like any proposed drawings for building new. Would you anticipate that it would have the same sort of features and function in the new, or would you really go with something very different if you had a blank slate?
Thank you. Very good question. I would go with something very different. He did that comparison, you know, I think just to show a new building of similar size would cost about this. Now, having said that, I'm no expert in space and art with things like that, but I'm not sure we need a much bigger building. I mean, police operations wise than we have now. I think it's more of we need a better design. So I don't think if we had a new police department, whatever form it comes, whether it's a standalone building or part of a public safety complex, I'm not sure it would need to be much bigger than 15,600 square feet. I just think a better design space would be, you know, more what we needed. So I think he was trying his best to do an apples to apples, at least summary, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that helps. Thank you.
Ralph?
So, Chief, it doesn't look like there's any room for growth in the future. Obviously, our town's getting bigger. We have a lot of farmland that will soon become houses over the next 20 years. Obviously, we're going to be needing more officers as you get more people. And I don't want to run into the same situation in 25 years where, hey, we've outgrown it again. The other thing I notice is the garage space for vehicles. At least I'm very well aware, when you store vehicles inside, they tend to last longer. You tend to keep them up better. And I mean, when I look at this, the first thing I think of is maybe add on some bays for vehicles, which if we grow in the future, at that point, maybe you could take them out and turn that into other space. I mean, I looked at the hill numbers and all, and I wasn't real impressed with the study. It didn't get into the intricacies that I wanted to see with it, as far as, hey, what do we need? What can we build? How can we build it in such a way to expand? And again, I don't know what the parameters were on that, but just looking quickly at this, like I said, over the last few days, that's what I see. I don't know what your thoughts are on as far as something on that, expansions and stuff.
Thank you, Counselor. My initial thing is, I guess this kind of plays into one of my arguments for a new station and part of a public safety complex, ideally, is much like Chief Morset's argument that his department has changed. You know, our building here is 50 years old, or close to it. I think it's a year younger than I am. So, and my understanding is that the department was 14 members back when it was built. And we are now 27, sitting at 27 now, I believe. So, yeah, we basically doubled in size since this building was built, which is why, you know, staying in the existing footprint, even with renovations in the existing footprint, really just doesn't quite get us there. An addition certainly helps. That helps meet some of our needs, but like I said, I would, you know, in the perfect world, I'd rather start with a blank slate. I'd rather work with an architect who specializes in public safety specifically, and design. Regarding your vehicle comment, I do agree. And actually one of the things I spoke about with the architect here was, if this were to happen, if we went forward with this project, did the expansion out back, take one of the things I was going to hopefully cost into the final project of this would be a covered parking area, not full on garages, but at least like, what do you call them? You know what I mean? Just an open, you know, open-ended covered, putting roofs over cars. You know, I agree that definitely at least covering them. Yeah, ideally inside is great, but reality, you know, we're not going to probably ever get enough inside garage space, as much as I'd love it for all our vehicles. So even just putting a cover over them, though, just certainly helps. And that would have been, you know, part of a hopeful design. You know, maybe something solar, you know, generated and all that sort of thing, like you see out there nowadays. Carport, yeah, that's the word I was trying to think of. It just carport. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
And kind of to build off of what Ralph's point was, is that upstairs garage is also the Sally port, right? So you probably wouldn't even keep a car in there.
Correct. Yeah. The upstairs, correct. We wouldn't. Right now, our cars pretty much stay in there. You know, we're down to so few that are running right now. We mostly have them in there, but they're all being used every shift, so they're generally out. But yes, it would. If we were to go with this, stay here and go with this design, that really would not be. I would not have a car sitting in there at all times, because it would be functioning as a Sally port. It's supposed to be in and out for prisoner, you know, intake and egress. So I don't want vehicles sitting in there.
So you go from having garage space for 6 cars, including the back, to essentially 1.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the PD only study, Jim?
Yeah, just I wanted to make sure I understood you correctly in terms of, I thought I heard you make a comment that it's not size or space, it's the design of the space. So I know I hear the word addition or expansion or whatnot, but I thought you indicated that you don't necessarily, even though you went from 14, we went from 14 to 27 officers, it's the flow of the space that's the problem and not necessarily the amount of the space. Is that correct? Did I hear you correctly?
Yes and no, but I meant if we went to 14,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet, which would happen with the addition. That's what I meant. So yeah, right now we're too small as it stands, but if we were to get an addition to make our total workable space approximately 15,600 square feet, that's what I meant when I said, you know, whether we did this plan or a total standalone station or public safety complex somewhere else, I'm guessing that square footage would be big enough. But yeah, existing, you're right. I did kind of say something I didn't really mean to imply. Our existing square footage as it exists now is not big enough for our department. That is correct.
Right. Just one more question, Ryan. The the proposed study to look at a safety complex as opposed to separate fire station and police station. I assume part of that study would be aimed at the efficiencies that would be generated by having those two together physically, as opposed to spitting distance apart, not very far away. And why that would be more efficient for the town than just dealing with the issues separately for each station.
Yes, that would absolutely be part of the study. Cost benefit analysis, things like that.
So,
Ryan,
yep, Mary.
Bruce wanted to weigh in briefly on that question from Jim.
So yeah, and Jim, that's a great question. I just wanted to weigh in. So as we sit here as well, and just I'm echoing what Paul said at the last meeting. By doing this or combining the police and fire in a public safety complex, this is going to free up some much needed space, obviously, for the town hall. And obviously give the DPW another location to be and help with, obviously, with some of our vehicle storage issues at our existing yard. So it's not only for the police and fire, it's actually to help the entire town. So we not have to look for more office space for town hall, storage space. So this kind of molds all those needs together and would alleviate that in the upcoming future, probably 15, 20 years by allowing the town offices to expand out to other locations and things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up to the committee as well.
Bruce, do you think we need another town hall study?
Excuse me?
Do you think we need another town hall study?
No town hall studies. No more studies.
I joke because there are 6 town hall studies before any action was taken. So with Jim's
Perhaps
question,
this issue should go on the comprehensive capital plan so at least it has a holding space like Heritage Park or these things that we talk about and then don't ever seem to accomplish much. At least if it's on the radar, we can then have I think the committee that Paul suggested is a good idea. It's probably not likely that any type of massive investment would happen this year or next, or perhaps the 3rd year. But I think it's something that needs consistent attention. And then the decision has to be, do you want to spend money to add to the police department? Because Bruce is sitting here telling me that based on its construction, you really can't do much to modify it internally at a reasonable cost. I mean, it's built as a bunker. And so there's not going to be a feasible facile redesign internally. And query how much money the town wants to invest in an addition versus a larger, more comprehensive idea of the public safety complex, which, as Bruce adequately and rightly points out, we're starved for space. So it's just a lot of food for thought.
so with moving the discussion towards a public safety complex, do you guys have any points you want to make in favor of the complex versus just the PD study, and then we'll go for questions? Or do you want to jump right into the questions? Paul, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I'm good. I think I kind of, shared my early views at this point. And I'm ready for questions if there's any for the fireside.
All right, Mr. Page.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So what I've been hearing in town is possibly instead of doing a safety complex, do a satellite setup for the fire department. Part of the concerns is like over on Porter Road, when you get out to the far ends and all the length of time it takes to get out there. And maybe instead of building one large facility, to look to do some type of a satellite facility. Just wanted to know what your thoughts were on something like that. Does that make sense? Would it alleviate the issues right now, or?
It would definitely help spread out the staffing and the apparatus. If I had my way about it, I know it's closer, but I would consider the Benton Drive Long Meadow line for the satellite. That those three complexes there are our highest, our busiest customers, I guess I'll say. I know the Bluebird and the Reserve, the other end of town, is a little bit further away, and they're actually not that far off. So I guess one way to think about it, Ralph, is if we do put that committee together, that's an option that could be looked at, such as Mark's, the police department's, existing facility, or just a standalone building. To move us into a satellite facility, we've actually talked about it internally here and discussed, operationally how it would work. And I think it's a good idea in a short fix. I think overall, though, if we could, come up with something that helps both departments, and then actually helps spread out some of the other town departments, and it might be the best bang for the buck. There is that property on Allen Street that the town owns, but that might be too close to the line, that direction.
Any other questions for the public safety complex study proposal?
Not so much a question, but I guess just a bit of a broad comment. I like the idea of forming a committee to at least start looking at all the different options before we spend money on a study, because my only hesitation with funding a study at this point is if we really don't have, as a town, the appetite to start digging in the ground in the next couple of years. I don't want to see us fund a study just for it to sit on the shelf and be 5 years outdated before we have to redo it again to get traction on it.
Ryan, can I just make a comment, and maybe Bruce can, the hard part with just doing an internal committee and not having, if we come up with a plan and not have real numbers from a professional architect or a consultant that does this, our study, that would help us determine what direction is better feasible for the town. If we know a public safety complex is so much a square foot, but to modify this building or put a satellite building up for the fire department's this much, we have an idea already what the police station modification is, or a new facility. But going forward, if we don't know right numbers, it may be $30,000 or $40,000 isn't the right number yet, and maybe we do put a committee together and come up with a whole list of options, and then we go back next year and hit it with a true feasibility consultant study.
Yeah, I think what the intent, or what I envision the intent of that committee would be to kind of look at our needs for across all departments. As Bruce had mentioned, the DPW service building doesn't even have air conditioning. They have to put window units in. So, if there's somewhere where you can fit in, instead of it being a public safety complex, a municipal complex, and pull all three in, or come up with all of our needs instead of, just the public safety needs, and then go towards the study and start building it out that way. I think having all of our needs laid out, probably via committee, would be our first step.
I agree.
Connor?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, basically, that was the intent of what I was trying to get at, was to at least just lay out what of all our options are first before we then narrow down a study onto where that committee thinks the best path forward is. Because even in exploring all the options, we first have to figure out what are even the feasible places of land you could put any of these things are.
Yeah. Any other discussion on the public safety complex before we cut Chief Morissette loose?
Just a question, Ryan. On our agenda, we had the capital submission. So did we already talk about vehicles, or?
No, I skipped that. This way Chief Morissette didn't have to sit through.
Oh, Chief Morissette, sure. No more from me. Thank you.
Chief Williams is not as lucky to get away. He's got all the rest of his projects to talk about. All right, no other questions. Chief Morissette, you're all set.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Williams,
Thank you.
start with your first priority, top priority capital project.
Okay, vehicles. So I have a request in for, as you see, for 4 vehicles out of this capital project. And I guess I'll talk about my view on the needs for the vehicles, and then I had a thought on how to potentially pay for it. Just a couple of different options. So I'll start with the kind of our marked cruisers. I'm asking for 2 of the 4 vehicles to be marked cruisers. Right now, that's a pretty much our base number. I think that we need to just kind of meet the minimum, so to speak, or kind of just keep things rolling the way they are. Our current fleet is very stressed right now. It's really, in the bigger picture, it's really kind of undersized for a staff our size. I mean, I think of the last place I came from, we had pretty much the same size patrol division as we do here, same amount of bodies on the patrol side of the house, and we had 9 marked cruisers in that department my whole career, and it actually went to 10 just before I left. And here right now we have 5 that are working, and on a normal kind of rotational basis, we're generally going with about 6. So right now we have 18 patrol officers are using 4 cars, and is generally on a normal shift, if everybody's here, 4 patrol officers working. So that means every marked cruiser is getting used every single shift. And we have, 5 patrol sergeants are sharing 1 car. So right now the stress on our current fleet is just really heavy. And that's being reflected in our vehicle maintenance costs. We're already over budget for this year and what we've had to spend. We have 1 marked cruiser right now that's out of service completely because it needs a very expensive engine repair. And I said I can't in good conscience fix it at this point. It's already high miles and this and that. So sorry to get down into the weeds there a little bit, but really just getting 2 cars is really just kind of to help keep us afloat. We have a deployment plan in place for these cars when they get here. Supply chain issues have actually delayed the delivery of cars. We still have three cars that are in the hopper right now that we still haven't gotten. So we have one car that we're waiting on a phone call. It's waiting on 1 part that should be ready to pick up any day now, maybe as soon as tomorrow. And then we have 2 more, that's from FY21 capital. And then we have 2 more that are on this year's capital, FY22. Those are on order. So I think everybody knows, and you've heard this before about delays in delivery and parts and things like that with the pandemic. And we're seeing that with our vehicles. So we're really, that's another reason why our fleet is so stressed right now. Having said that, if this request is approved with these 2, I would be shocked if we actually see those cruisers here even a year from now. I don't think the forecast for this calendar year in terms of supply chain issues is really much improved from last in these areas. So it's just unfortunate. Everybody's struggling with this. Every police department, every town, anybody who needs a vehicle is struggling with this issue. Because of this has also kind of led to some uncertainty in our costs. We did get some quotes, as you saw. However, by the time we actually get to the point where we're ordering these, if this is approved, I did ask for a little bit of extra money in there just to account for projected price increases, model year changes, equipment increases. We all know inflation is here, and I don't think we've seen the end of that yet. So I just asked for a little bit of extra just to account for that. Also, whenever you get new cars, we do reuse most of our equipment. Most of our equipment gets transferred from one marked cruiser that's going offline to the new ones. But there's always the occasional thing that ends up being, nope, this doesn't fit in the newer vehicles, or this ends up not working anymore. You should just replace it, things like that. So ask for just a little bit to cover kind of some of those unforeseen expenses. The request encompasses also the cost of decaling the vehicles, which we have done here locally by Go Graphics. They do a great job. So that is the request specifically on the 2 marked vehicles. Do you want me to entertain questions on those specifically, Ryan, or just keep going?
I'd say give an overview of I think that's a pickup and then what a DB car.
Yeah, so the other 2 vehicles, I'll start with the pickup. You have heard this before, many of you. This request again, and I kind of outlined it again in my request letter to you about the need for, I believe, the pickup truck. I think it's a valid need here. This would not be a patrol vehicle, so it's not unlike our marked cruisers, which generally, have about a 3-year shelf life before, they really start to go downhill and get cost ineffective. Around that 3-year, 100,000 mile mark, they're pretty well worn out for ideal everyday use. A truck, it would not get daily use. It certainly would be something that could last much longer. I think it's like a 10-year vehicle at least. So, we right now we continue to have our officers use their own pickup trucks to do things. Especially at firearms qualification times, the time I see it most, where I see our instructors and things loading up things in their personal pickup trucks. These are bulky items that we need to use out at the range, driving out to the range, and I just don't think that's a reasonable expectation for us to do of our employees over and over and over, to ask them to use their own vehicles to transport department equipment. And this isn't just like equipment. This is sometimes, lots of times it's firearms. It's things that we really shouldn't ideally have, in people's personal vehicles that belong to the department. It just would be best to keep these in department cruisers. And our cruisers, as one, they're all on patrol right now because we're so short-handed on marked cars, and they're just not designed to carry a lot of these bigger items. The truck we could also use to keep some, road closure equipment handy, so we could quickly deploy in an incident where we need to close a road. It would certainly help us at our bigger events in town in the year, when you need to deliver various, larger, whether it's road closure equipment, tables, chairs, things. There's just all sorts of things that that we could use it for. It would also be a good vehicle for, because it wouldn't be set up as a prisoner transport vehicle. It wouldn't have a cage in it. It could easily comfortably transport 4 people to go one place at once. So, we could have officers riding it together to go to various trainings or different things like that. So it's something that would get used. It wouldn't get overused. It wouldn't get, it's something that I think would last quite a long time. And I think, we could have a trailer hitch on it, tow our trailer, which would, we could start. So lots of times we're getting calls about, picking up bicycles that are found property that are larger items. We serve restraining orders on people who have a large number of firearms. Those can sometimes be pretty sizable space needs when you're talking about taking, many heavy items, things like that. So that's my pitch for the pickup truck again. I hope it's given your consideration again. The unmarked vehicle I'm asking for is to, we're going to have some personnel reassignments here. One kind of, I'm anticipating 2 kind of changes in positions that would both need an unmarked vehicle assigned to them. So one is the expected lieutenant's position, or second in command position. That person, by function needs to have their own vehicle assigned to them, not be part of a shared vehicle. So they're going to need a vehicle. And as well, I'm looking to add on a second detective. I shouldn't say add, it's really reassign an existing officer patrol officer to the detective bureau and have a second detective's position. This is really overdue in my opinion. And I think it's really needed. So that detective as well, there would be times when they'd be working potentially at the same time as the other detective. So they would need, you know, ideally have their own vehicle assigned to them as well. I do have, with the expected, hopefully approved new cruisers that come, I should be able to repurpose one of my existing patrol cruisers to be an unmarked vehicle as well. So I think I can meet the needs of one of the unmarks that way. But the other one, I am asking for a new purchase. Our existing unmarked vehicle fleet is pretty thin right now. Our one detective drives a very old Ford Crown Victoria that has it's pretty tired. It really should be retired. In fact, I had the a few months ago, he filled up the gas tank at the DPW and went to drive out, and the gas tank dropped on the ground. Luckily, it happened there and not somewhere else. But that just gives you an idea of this. The age and condition of that car is to the point where it really, I'd like to retire that as well. So getting an unmarked vehicle as part of a new purchase would help me, you know, move some things around and repurpose a cruiser to be another unmarked, retired unmarked vehicle that we have now that's in use, while also being able to support the lieutenant with their own vehicle. And again, like the truck, I wouldn't promise 10 years on an unmarked vehicle, but unmarked vehicles definitely have a longer shelf life than our marked cruisers. Ballpark generally at least 5 years, you know, depending on the type of use and things like that. And oftentimes we get a lot more use out of them than that.
So one of your other submissions is about moving towards leased vehicles. You want to give us the 5-minute pitch on the leased vehicles?
Yes. So this is something I've looked into before. And again, this is bringing my experience from my last department that I worked for. The chief I worked for up there brought this into that department, and it seemed to work pretty well. It's a way to, you know, kind of take, you know, whereas the one request is about $214,000 one-time payment. If you look at a lease option, yes, it doesn't make things any cheaper necessarily per se, but it does take that money and spread it out over 3 years. So it would make at least the initial appropriation request could go down to about, sorry, I've got multiple windows open here. Depending, and again, I got quotes from a couple different lease companies. There's more out there. One of them I got a quote from is the company I'm familiar with from my last department. Another one, a company I got a quote from is from a more local leasing company. They're actually out in Cape Cod. Depending on what lease you went with, what your interest rate was, and if you put a down payment down or not, really affects these numbers. But in general, it could reduce a $214,000 one-time request to, let's just say, about, on one of my quotes here, is $84,000 over 3 years. And, you know, and full disclosure, not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, you know, that isn't to say, oh, you can get 3 vehicles every year for 3 years at $84,000. No, next year, you know, if this were approved this fashion, I would again come to Capitol with a request for more vehicles that we need. I would be requesting the money for payment of year 2 of the lease of this lease, and also asking for a new lease year 1 for however many more vehicles I would have in. So over the process of 3 years, it may increase my request capital wise, but I think at the end of, once you hit that kind of 3-year mark, I found if you do these 3-year leases, especially on the marked vehicles, it kind of gets into a nice natural cycle of, once you hit that 3rd year, you've always got a lease coming off, you've got a new lease coming on. It really levels out your request. I think it helps the town plan in terms of like an expectation. Okay, you kind of get a pretty firm as you can number of kind of knowing what's coming in terms of request. And then, you know, you have the occasional year where maybe you have to add an extra vehicle in there, you know, whether it's an unmarked or you know, a pickup truck or whatever, you know, some other vehicle that, you know, isn't so-called the norm. But I would like to get to the point where I think the leasing option, whether it's for 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles, whatever, how many vehicles it is a year, I just think it gives the town and those looking at the expense side of things a pretty good idea of planning out and what's coming. again, it's just an option. The rates are pretty low right now. They're going to be creeping up. I think it's no secret the Fed will be raising rates, so they would be creeping up somewhat. But I do think it just gives another option if it feels like $215,000 right now for vehicles is too big of an ask in one fell swoop. It's just another way to look at it.
I think the leasing philosophy, we should really kind of like how with the public safety complex, pushing it to a committee, I think that needs to be looked at a whole town level. We obviously have a lot of vehicles. I think we need to come up with what our total cost of ownership is per year and either budget for that, for replacement of that, or we need to start, saying which vehicles are not as necessary. No, that's not necessarily pertaining to a lease. We could do that through regular budget appropriations, but I know, Steve, I think you've been doing a lot of research on leasing and everything.
We, my first question, and Chief, I think I know the answer. We own them at the end of the lease, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir. And just to Ryan's point, I don't remember if I mentioned this in my letter or not, but one of the companies the guy from Cape Cod who I spoke to, he did say, they will group municipal requests together and give every department, so to speak, this. So the more you group in there, the lower the rate, and they will treat everybody with the same rate, even if it's one department's ordering one vehicle and another department's ordering 5. They'll basically treat it as like a townwide benefit. So, economies of scale type of thing, kind of to Ryan's point, there is some possible merit, I think, in looking at that as an option as well.
The other thing, after last meeting, I took a look, I called our financial advisor as far as bonding for the vehicles, or the fire truck was initially, and I threw the, based on the 212,000 for the car fleet, the rate, the chief's absolutely right. The rates are going to start going up. But at the point of last week, it was, I did over 5 years, which I have to modify it down to 3, but it was coming in at 2.25%. And I think, Chief, what was the lease? The lease was higher as far as rate. The rate.
One of them I had was, yes, a little higher, 2.67. That was with a $20,000 down payment, right, which was about 10% of the request. And the other lease I looked at was no down payment, but 3.54%.
But to Ryan's point, I think that's one of the things you want to look at is, the lease, if it ends up in the same spot and it doesn't, how it impacts our borrowing, our debt, is a value, piece of data, I think, to know whether it makes sense to lease it or to just bond and buy it outright.
And just having a better picture of all of our vehicles. DPW's fleet's missing floors in half the vehicles, where if we can get a total number, we know what that number is going to be every year. We budget for it, we plan for it, and we just get these vehicles replaced when they become end of life.
Well, you'd have to do a 5-year plan out of it, of how much, each, because as Chief says, as one falls off, another one's coming on, but in the in between, you have all of them. And right. So it's a factor we need to see. There was one thing I wanted to mention, but I think, the delivery, I was talking to Bruce, I don't know if he's still with Mary, but
No, he's not. He left.
Okay. He told me that they're ordering a couple trucks that we approved in this year's capital plan. And he said Ford is, in a month or two, is going to stop taking orders. So delivery is there's going to be issues across the board with that. So we're not, even the new truck we bonded for, Bruce, the dealer told me that he goes, you're not looking at the same time for the end of calendar year 22, if not beginning of calendar year 23. So that's just so everybody's, aware on that thing, where that's going.
So Steve, I think as time allows, you might want to do some analysis, and perhaps when the committee's ready to vote on projects or prioritization, that you could weigh in later with the benefits of leasing versus outright purchase, at least for the vehicles that are the subject of this year's capital requests. I know that the broader view of the townwide fleet would take considerably more time.
Yeah, I'll have that by the time we vote.
If you get time, I realize it's budget season.
I'll be talking with our financial advisor in about 5 minutes anyway, so I'll have him start working on some stuff.
Connor?
I was just gonna say, and it could potentially be a hybrid approach, maybe just for this year's vehicle fleet considerations. I'm just making this up. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it makes sense. Oh, we just need to bond to get ourselves caught up with the backlog that we have, but then going forward, maybe leasing makes sense. I don't know, but I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be just one or the other.
Sure. Jim?
But it sounds like more of our problem is getting the vehicles, not buying, getting authorization to buy them. So whether, I don't know whether leasing it, you could get the vehicles faster than you could buy them, but I mean, that's very frustrating. And I'm sure a lot of the stress you feel is you just don't have those 3 vehicles that the town already authorized the police department to have in order to run your daily operations. It's got to be very frustrating. So we're talking about vehicles now that who knows when you're going to get them and obtain the benefits of it. I guess, I had a couple of questions, but I can delay, Brian. I don't know what your time frame is for finishing off.
We can go with questions. I think while it's fresh on everyone's mind, it's a good idea.
Okay.
All nodding, so.
All right. I did have a question on the benefits of leasing. There was a bullet point number 7 about non-appropriation language. And I can't say that I quite understood it, whether they were saying if you didn't appropriate, you wouldn't be in. I wasn't sure what it was telling me.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what that means
All right.
either.
And I don't need an answer now.
Yeah.
Steve?
I mean, Jim, the general rule is everything with contracts, you'll see it, American backgrounds, I believe there's a line that says subject to appropriations. So if the council said, no, we're not going to fund it.
So that's saying that it allows for the town to do that.
Yeah, the council can, in the budget cycle, can cut anything, as Councilor Page knows. And so he, if he was to say, you know what, I don't think we need the cruiser this year. It's rare. I'm going to say it's probably rare. Councilor Page, you may agree or disagree with that, but if he said on anything, if the appropriation is not there, we can't pay it, and it has to be, each year has to be voted in the budget.
Right. Okay, I'm that's what I was hoping it would say. I just couldn't quite figure it out. Familiar with that with commercial leases. The other thing I was going to mention is, the 2 per year, seems like a thing that we wanted to get into the habit of doing that, so that you didn't run too short on vehicles for your operations. The marked or unmarked vehicle, I wasn't a real proponent of the, due to assignment change, needing to buy another vehicle as opposed to, more people. But looking at the age of the Crown Victoria, your argument would be stronger for me as the replacement of the Crown Vic, but in any event, and I guess with the police, with the truck, I'm still kind of like, is it nice to have but doesn't have to have? And are there other options for the things that we would have it do? And I don't even know if there's trailer mounts or trailers, locked trailers that you could use that wouldn't cost the cost of a truck. So those are just my general impressions, in looking through.
One more question, Chief. Of the 3 vehicles, the 2 marked and the 1 unmarked, I couldn't tell just by the quotes there. Would they be just cars or SUVs?
The 2 marks would be SUVs. The unmarked, the quote was for a Chevy Equinox, which is a small SUV. That was that quote. I would certainly look at multiple options on that, but that's just what we could get a quote on at the moment. And to Jim's point, yes, however you need to look at it, yes. I mean, as I was talking, I was thinking the same thing, like, yeah, it is kind of The Crown Vic is definitely need to be retired. So in a way, this is functionally a replacement for that, while also helping. At the same time, I've still got to scramble to get another unmarked in line to deal with personnel changes as well. So
The lieutenant's car will be a take-home car, right?
that's to be discussed. That's potentially a contractual issue between them and the town. So I'll leave it at that.
But to be, worst case scenario,
It-
it's a
it-
take-home car.
Yeah, I would certainly argue for that on behalf of that person, but that would ultimately be up to the town manager.
Okay. Ralph?
Ryan, I've got a whole list here. So Chief, you gave us a sheet, fleet schedule, mileage with all your different cars on it.
Yes,
So I know there's 3 outstanding vehicles. Those I'm assuming are to replace some of these. Can you
correct.
tell me which car, the outstanding vehicles that we've already approved money are supposed to replace?
I'm
So no-
sorry. I'm sorry. Can you say that again? I want to make sure I
Yeah, so
understood.
last year we approved 2 new vehicles. We
Correct.
haven't received them yet.
Right.
Year before, I believe there's another vehicle. So you,
Yes.
in essence, from what I can see, you have 3 new vehicles coming.
Yes.
In this list, which
Yes.
ones are they going to replace?
Absolutely. And I have it ranked out.
Okay.
The first car we get, which should be the one getting here any day now, will replace car 13, which is the Ford Charger that is now
Yeah.
dead. The second car we get, which will be presumably one of the 2 that's on order for FY22, will replace car number 9, the other Dodge Charger. That is very, very high miles and just very tired.
Yep.
The third car we get will replace car 7. Again, it's an older Explorer, high miles, has no computer in it and this and that right now. So that would cycle down to a backup car. It is a backup car now that may be cycled out to unmarked, or maybe it's one of our cars that doesn't have major mechanical issues at the second. Maybe it could be repurposed for another town department. Our fourth vehicle, I'll talk about 4 and 5 if this request is approved, theoretically. If this request is approved, we would replace car 1 to 2015 Ford Explorer. But again, I want to be clear, that's marked as a detail car right now, but that's because it's a backup car status. So in reality, what we would do is pull one of the current ones that you see as marked patrol, highlighted yellow, that would get pushed down, whatever best working one would be pushed down as a detail car, and car 1 would now become a fully frontline car. Just so you understand, I'm not advocating to buy cruisers to have a brand new cruiser go sit on the side of a road with its lights on. And then car 5, the 5th car, if this request is approved, that would replace car 6, the 2014 Ford Interceptor, again, which is right now just a backup car that has a bad transmission. That's going to be sent out to pasture soon anyway. And so in reality, I mean, if you want to look at it this way, right now we have 4 working marked patrol vehicles. In essence, we're going to rotate all of these into the 4 that are working right now, and push those down to a mixture of, what can we keep as a backup car in case other cars go down, or maybe what can we, can we make something unmarked or share it with another town department? Or, the other benefit I'm kind of hoping for, if we ever get on a consistent cycle of 2, maybe even 3 vehicles a year on the marked cruiser side, I think the value too in doing that is you can also get to a point where you actually have a car that's worth something on trade-in. Because right now we're not even really talking about trade-in values at all. But I think if we got to the point where we're replenishing our fleet at a frequent enough rate, we might actually get some decent trade-in value on some cars, which could help, bring down some costs of the purchase of new vehicles.
Okay, Chief, DTF, what does it stand for?
Okay, those are good. Those are drug task force cars. So those are related to seizures, which either we did or participated in task force with. or we use for those purposes. Actually, they're not necessarily, the cars themselves aren't necessarily seizures. So the Nissan Maxima we have was actually a car that was donated to us by Mascaro's Towing. That one does get used in some undercover operations currently. The Buick Regal, that was a vehicle that I believe Sergeant Bruno saw that was sitting over at the fire department that they were about to use for Jaws of Life training, and he went over and asked if we could have it, and they gave it to us. And so that one's really not in great shape. Again, it's used periodically as an undercover, but it's definitely not something that we'd want to use in daily operations. And the Ford Taurus, that's an old car that was a prior car for our court officer, and you know, a detective sergeant to use. I guess that's an old retired car. I'm not even sure how much that's used at this point.
And those cars don't show up on a replacement cycle. Those are
correct. Yes, I won't argue to replace one of those cars. Those are found vehicles to
for undercover work.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and Ryan, that was part of my question. I'm looking at the Nissan Maxima at 145,000 miles, wondering what the DTF meant, if it was, you know, if it was shot, no transmission, you know, what exactly, what that
That's
makes
Sergeant Bruno's code for like drug task force. So it pretty much means our detective who participates in task force activities, or our other officers do sometimes as well. They have those vehicles available for their use for that. But we certainly, anytime I try not to sink money into those cars. Anytime something comes that seems like it's of any sort of cost, I'm just like, let's not do it. We did actually reduce our fleet. We did donate, thanks to the agreement of Mary. We did actually donate 2 vehicles which were totally unusable to us to another town police department in Massachusetts, which was just good to get them out of our yard. Quite frankly, they were doing nothing for us but taking up space. So that was a good way to help out a small town police department.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Sorry, I blathered on too long. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just had a quick remark. Does the Mass State Police or the Springfield PD with their forfeiture of vehicles, do they ever auction those to other local PDs that maybe would allow us to get, you know, those drug cars, the nice ones, like
Yes.
the Audi 8s and all that
yeah.
stuff? I know when I was there, we used to have quite a fleet of seized vehicles that could be obtained. I don't know if they do that anymore in sort of an intramural exchange.
I will admit that in my professional world, I'm not as familiar with auction and seizure rules, having never been a firsthand participant on a regular basis in narcotics world investigation. But my understanding is, yes, if vehicles are seized as part of a narcotics investigation arrest, once the case is disposed of, there's an asset forfeiture process,
Right.
and the DA's office can ultimately share those proceeds, whether it's a 50-50 split on money or things like vehicles and whatever with the participating town department. So one of the reasons I like to have our detective involved in a task force like he is now is he's been participating directly in a number of pretty high profile drug arrests. Again, not necessarily in East Long Meadow, but in other places. And our hopes is that the DA's office, besides giving us money back for personnel expenses, is also, we hope to get a piece of some of those property seizures at some point down the road.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to plant that seed, if not for this year, perhaps in years to come.
Yes.
Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, one more follow-up question, and this one's for Steve. So if we, let's say, allocate money for 2 vehicles, we're not going to be bonding. It'll come out of our capital money. How soon from the new fiscal year can they actually order the vehicles? So if we've approved it, we start the new fiscal year July 1st. Does that mean if they have estimates and all on July 10th that they can go ahead and order them. It seems to take quite a while to get the vehicles ordered, and then it takes a year to get them in. And it seems like what we're planning to do right now is for like a year and a half down the road or more.
Well,
Is there
once
any
we-
way to speed that process up?
Once the budget's approved with the capital money, attached to it, we can transfer the money, the raise and appropriate money in as soon as it's, as of July 2nd, if you vote on it July, if it's voted July 1st. So as of July, very beginning of the fiscal year, we can do that and then do the order. Also, even if the transfer, we know the transfer's coming. So if the ordering process can be started and we'll get the transfer over. It's an entry that we would make and make sure the money's in the right fund. So we can do it almost immediately.
If I might add too, just to, I know at least this past year, one of the things we ran up against, and Sergeant Bruno does a fabulous job with our fleet organization and maintenance here. And we ran up against vendors saying, I can't take an order right now. We have no vehicles. So we were getting pushed, we were trying, and we were getting pushed off. And another thing that Sergeant Bruno works very hard at is kind of cultivating relationships with as many of vendors as possible. And sometimes, that leads to a, hey, I don't have the money yet, but it's coming July 1st. Can you kind of hang on to these for me types of conversations? And,
Right.
and there are people who are, you have a good relationship with people. They're willing to work with you on that as best you can.
Yeah, the big part now is, as the chief said, the supply chain and the vendor saying whether we will or not take an order. But if it's not a bonding situation, we can do it very quickly.
All right, any other questions for Chief Williams? All right. Chief, you're all set.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're 16 minutes over my promised time. I think the minutes from last meeting I sent out a little prematurely, and I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to review them and has any suggested edits. If you want to send those to me, I can modify the minutes for next meeting and we can approve those along with today's minutes. I did forget to mention at the beginning of the meeting that Rich had a personal obligation that just kind of came up and was not able to make this meeting. I know we kind of shuffled around a little bit to accommodate his incredibly busy schedule. And he did tell me that he is committed to remaining on the committee. It's just, he's dealing with something that had a higher priority. So looking at scheduling our next meeting, is the Thursday at 10 working, is good for everybody?
Yeah, that seems to work for me. One question about the minutes. I didn't see them sent to me. Was I missing that?
They were attached in the email I sent on January 31st, 9:02. It was a PDF attachment. I can resend them to you. I'll resend them to you with this today's meeting.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I might just.
Counselor, they came in with the prioritization of DPW.
Oh, maybe that's why I mixed it up. I'll look again. Thanks.
Not a problem. So if we shoot for my calendar, the 10th at 10. That works for everybody, and I'll let Rich know. I'm not sure if his obligation will be resolved at that point, but Jim?
So just in the spirit of disclosure, I've got the knee replacement surgery scheduled for Monday, the 7th. So I don't know what shape I'll be in on Thursday, the 10th. I might be under the influence of drugs. So I can't promise I'll be able to make it. If I'm feeling fine, I'll try to do so. But if you don't see me, it's because I'm otherwise occupied.
Sounds good. So I'll get that posted for Thursday at 10, the 10th at 10, and I'll get the minutes for the last meeting cleaned up and sent over, as well as for this meeting. Any other old business or new business?
Good luck with the surgery, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
So
moved to
moved.
adjourn.
Moved-
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor, Steve,
Yes.
Ryan is a yes, Connor
Yes.
is a yes, Ralph,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Mary.
Yes.
All right, that concludes our meeting at 11:19. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
you.